Hey everyone, it's Amber and Jessie from Dog and Bone Consulting, coming to you with another Tech Wednesday update. And today we're going to be talking about mobile data aggregation. And Jessie is one of our senior analysts within our telecommunications management as a service team and has been with Dog and Bone for a number of years. So he's going to talk us through what is data aggregation and why is it so good.
Hi, thanks Amber. Yes, I've been here for 13 years. So data aggregation is so good because it makes it much easier, much cheaper to manage the data for your mobile fleet. That's essentially it. It's fantastic. Managing data on an individual basis across a large fleet is a massive headache, and this just makes it much easier.
Yep. And so in terms of talking about data aggregation, I think you're talking about shared data, and shared data would be a pool of data, which would be the basic default. So in terms of understanding the benefits of it and taking advantage of them, how would you go about setting that up?
So shared data is the default for most plans at the moment. We didn't invent it, but there are certain tricks you can do to get the most out of it. There's certain things that probably seem a little bit counterintuitive. So the main thing to bear in mind with shared data or aggregated data is you only worry about how much data your fleet is using as a whole. You don't worry about individual users.
Yep.
Make sure everyone can access the shared data pool, and then basically just make sure you have enough data for everyone. So that's the basic level to proceed from.
Yep. And then in terms of actual savings, how much cheaper is shared data than not?
So shared data is probably 20 to 30% cheaper than individual data. That's an average. It can be much higher for organisations that have a lot of sort of data spikes or where users kind of go off reservation sometimes. But generally, yeah, something like that.
Yep. And then for cutting costs, what more can be done about that?
So you can go on above and beyond that. It can seem a bit counterintuitive, but there are certain things you can do. One thing is, like I said, you make sure everyone can access the shared data pool, because you don't want to be paying pay-as-you-go data rates. They're exorbitant, they're ridiculous, so
Yes.
avoid at all costs. But the other thing, as I say, is to not worry about individual users so much. So probably the most common mistake we see, or pitfall, is to look at a user that you need, say, 4 gigabytes of data and then put them on a 4 gigabyte plan.
Yes.
That's almost never the best way to do it. You need to really think of it as a whole. In fact, you've commonly seen that, and you had quite a high profile case recently with a client.
Yeah, I did actually. We had a client that has been with Dog and Bone for a number of years now, and they actually understand telecommunications quite well, but they had a whole heap of devices on really low usage plans because that had been our recommendation, and they wanted to lift probably around 500 of those devices up to 1 gig each. Now, to do that would cost an extra $10 per device, so 5,000 in total. And would have resulted in them getting an extra 415 gig of data per month. But because we manage their mobile data usage, we showed them that we could achieve the same result for $1,250, saving them $3,750 per month, or a 75% saving. So I think that they felt that all the low users needed to come up, but realistically it was all about the total number across that fleet, and then we were able to show them that better way to save that money, which is great. Everyone's looking for cost reduction at the moment in this current climate.
Yep, yeah, that was a great result, and exactly right. We kind of just looked at the big number. We didn't worry about what all the individual users were doing. We just looked at the big number and then acted and tailored according to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But are there any risks to doing this, Jessie, in terms of just looking at the big number?
There are. So the biggest risk we see is with certain contracts, we'll have kind of hidden clauses or fine print where there'll be things like fair usage policies or fair play policies where certain plans can't share their full amount, or there's a limit on how much you can share or how much you can access from the shared data pool, and you won't realise, and you'll run into these clauses and you'll start accruing excess data charges. That's probably the biggest one. So really, I mean, in general, probably you need to read your mobile contracts, as boring as it is, but just watch out for clauses like that. They're pretty rare, but they do exist.
And in this current time, obviously with the coronavirus and so many staff working from home, what would we do about managing that?
Probably just be a bit more cautious. Enlarge your shared data pool. Everyone's working from home, as you say. We're using more data. So we saw a big spike at the end of March, and it's kind of continued. So in general, you want to have a buffer at the moment of about 50% more than your needs. So let's say your fleet needs about 1,000 gigabytes, for example. You want to have a shared data pool of 1,500 gigabytes, just a 50% buffer, and that'll protect you against sudden blowouts.
Yep. And how do you go about tracking that? How would people manage that?
So all carriers will have a notification system where you can opt in, and they'll send you an email when your fleet has reached, 50%, 100%, that kind of thing. I recommend you always have that turned on, and it'll kind of tell you where you're at.
Yep, fantastic. And look, and it can be a complicated thing for people to manage themselves. So we do a lot of work with the community sector. If there's any not-for-profits or government organisations out there that do need some support or some free advice with this, please feel free to reach out to us for our Tech Wednesday advice line. And more broadly, for any of the corporate organisations as well, whether they be our current clients or not, if you do need help with this, please feel free to reach out. It can be something that can be difficult to comprehend or to understand for especially a large fleet, but we're more than happy to support those organisations if you do discover that this is an issue for you, which in this current climate, I imagine is the case for a number of people. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time, Jessie, in discussing that and letting people know the importance and the ways that we can take full advantage of the shared data aggregation.
No worries, thank you.
Thanks.